I am in Atlanta, Georgia at the Center for Puppetry Arts, which is home to the Worlds of Puppetry Museum. This fine institution, containing a puppetry theater and workshops alongside the museum, was opened by Jim Henson and Kermit the Frog back in 1978. Notice that there is an inflatable Yukon Cornelius at the entrance. That is because they have a special Christmas display right now, featuring two iconic and rarely shown puppets. Here are the Rudolph and Santa Claus puppets from the classic 1964 Rankin-Bass stop-motion Christmas film, Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. These are believed to be the only two surviving puppets from the historic animation, which was probably my favorite Christmas movie when I was young, so these are pretty amazing to see. While these puppets are definitely authentic from the film's production, their actual usage and provenance is questionable. It is believed that Arthur Rankin, one of the big heads at Rankin-Bass, gifted these two puppets and possibly some others to an employee. Said employee's family tossed them into an attic of misfits where they severely deteriorated over several decades, so the other puppets like possibly Hermie, Yukon Cornelius, or the freaking Bumble most likely completely melted. It's also a shame that Sam the Snowman disintegrated, as he was voiced by the great Burl Ives. Rudolph and Santa were located around 2005 and were brought onto Antiques Roadshow, where they were verified then restored. There are some pictures of the restoration process. You can see how Santa looked pretty rough there, with half of his mustache missing. Now around that time when these puppets first came on the market, Rankin-Bass historian Rick Goldschmidt claimed that these were the screen-used puppets, but he has since gone back on that and said they were just promotional puppets intended for publicity photo shoots. Also back in 1964, these two may have been displayed at the NBC studio at Rockefeller Center as advertising. It does kind of make sense that these were just promotional puppets, given that just Rudolph and Santa exist. Regardless of whether these puppets were used in the animation itself, they were sold at auction in 2020 for $368,000 to an anonymous buyer, and that individual has graciously loaned these puppets to the center during special holiday displays, so the public can enjoy these pop culture treasures. They have been well restored and it's great to appreciate these small puppets up close. The Rudolph puppets were designed and built in Japan by MOM Film Studio. These two puppets are both less than a foot tall and created out of wood, wire, yak hair, leather, and other fabrics. Also notice the electric wiring on Rudolph. They actually put a red light in his nose to make it glow. It really is awesome to see these two puppets which I watched growing up, though I do wish the others, especially the Bumble, had survived. There are some other iconic holiday puppets on display alongside Rudolph, such as these Muppet Reindeer. They were created by Jim Henson and performed on the Ed Sullivan Show for the 1968 Christmas special. Here is Emmett Otter's Jug Band. Several of the authentic puppets used in Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas special in 1977, which was directed by Jim Henson. And this is Salem the Cat from Sabrina the Teenage Witch. It is an animatronic puppet that was custom designed for a Christmas episode. You can see the robotic details below the cats. Also, here's a 1950s Rudolph ride from Atlanta's Old Montgomery Ward department store. The Center for Puppetry Arts is home to much of the Jim Henson Company archives. They have over 500 Muppets in the collection here, though they certainly do not display all of them. When Jim Henson was still in high school, he got involved with a local TV station's puppet show. They ended up giving him his own regular 5-minute feature which he called Sam and Friends, for which he would create Kermit the Frog. Jim's eventual wife Jane Nebel also worked with him on the show. She made this puppet. Here's an old Ralph the Dog puppet made by Jim Henson in 1969. Ralph originally appeared in 1962 on the Jimmy Dean Show, and for Purina Dog Chow commercials. This is a recreation of Jim Henson's office, which is entirely composed of original furnishings and keepsakes. That is Jim Henson's work desk, which is incredible. There are some of his Emmy Awards and Golden Records for Sesame Street and the Muppets. There are some of Henson's books with a Kermit, of course. That papier-mâché light-up moose head was prominently mounted in his New York office for decades. There's a picture of him with it. Next to it there's a needlepoint of Bert, Ernie, and Cookie Monster that was made by Henson's aunt. That is a reproduction of the Bert and Ernie stained glass window that graced Henson's New York office. Henson and Frank Oz are controlling the Muppets from below. The next exhibit is a simulation of Jim Henson's Muppet Workshop, lined with boxes full of various Muppet parts and accessories. That is a realistic dog puppet animatronic used in The Storyteller, a late 80s show retelling European folktales. Apparently this dog talked in that. There are many interactive elements to the exhibit. Visitors can open drawers and find miscellaneous puppet parts, which is quite fun. Here are all sorts of tools used in planning, designing, and building Muppets. Back during the Muppet Show, puppet makers in the shop were constantly building and refining Muppets and worked with a wide range of materials to create unique designs. This setup really is fantastic. Love the rubber chicken. There are quite a few completed Muppets on display in here as well. These are from the Mother Goose stories. That is a Fozzie amoeba which performed on episode 409 of The Muppet Show. It was handled and voiced by Frank Oz. This is a huge camel used in The Muppet Show. Most Muppets were made out of foam rubber which was covered by fleece. There is King Gosh Posh from Hey Cinderella, which was released in 1969. Sesame Street is one of the longest running television programs in history, and that is thanks to Jim Henson, who featured and created Muppet characters for the popular children's show starting in 1969. These are authentic Bert and Ernie Muppets screen used in Sesame Street. They have been staples of the show since the beginning. It looks like they are perpetually showing off a bottle cap collection. This is Big Bird, a full-size walk-around character costume decked out in turkey feathers. For nearly 50 years, Big Bird was performed on Sesame Street by Carol Spinney, who would walk around and operate his beak from inside the suit. He finally retired in 2018. Here are some more authentic Sesame Street Muppets. This is Roosevelt Franklin, who was a main character in the early 70s but ceased to appear a long time ago. There's Grover and Elmo. Elmo originally debuted in the 80s as a background monster character. And here is Cookie Monster. This puppet was screen used on Sesame Street and operated by Frank Oz. That's pretty cool. There is an interactive Sesame Street set for children to play around with. Here is Clementine and Fred the Wonder Horse from Sesame Street. Hey Cinderella was one of the 3 Tales from Muppetland films. Another in 1972 was The Muppet Musicians of Bremen, featuring T.R. Rooster on the left and Leroy Donkey on the right, who looks absolutely absurd and derpy. And this is the screen-used Splurge puppet from Hey Cinderella, performed by Frank Oz. Here is the Muppet Show display. I did love the Muppet Show growing up, so this is quite exciting to see. Let's start out with Kermit the Frog himself. He's sitting on his director's chair with a megaphone. This particular Kermit was a photo puppet made in the mid-1970s for still photographs and promotional materials, so this one was never seen in the show, but it's always amazing to see a real Kermit. One thing I learned here was that in 1971, Jim Henson and his fellow puppeteers performed with Nancy Sinatra in Las Vegas at the International Hotel, which was where Elvis Presley was performing around that time. These shows prove that the Muppets were not just for kids. There is an interesting selection of Muppets out. I especially like the Phenomena guy from the iconic song. Here is Scooter, a screen used puppet from 1976. And this is Miss Kitty from the Great Santa Claus Switch. Here is Gonzo. Now this is a reproduction of Gonzo made by a longtime Muppet artist, but he is wearing his actual costume from the Great Muppet Caper. Gonzo is joined by a penguin that was handmade by Jim Henson. And this is chicken number 5. Here are some pigs in space! Some puppets used in a recurring Muppet Show sketch featuring the intergalactic adventures of these two pigs, Dr. Julius Strangepork and Captain Link Hogthrob. Brilliant names. Here are 4 of the 7 deadly sins. They were featured on the Muppet Show Sex and Violence pilot in 1975. These are really creative designs. Here are some Muppets from Muppets Treasure Island, the 1996 film based on Treasure Island. There is Miss Piggy in her Treasure Island attire. This character actually first appeared briefly in the Muppets Sex and Violence special. Next to Miss Piggy is Mad Monty, also screen used in Treasure Island. Moving on, here are some pieces from Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas special, including Emmett Otter's canoe. These are some genuine puppets from Fraggle Rock, including screen-used puppets of Wembley and Red. I am not terribly familiar with Fraggle Rock, so if you've seen the show, let me know what you thought about it. This is Sprocket the dog from Fraggle Rock. These are the Doozers, tiny hardworking miners and construction creatures who very much contrasted the laid-back Fraggles. And here are some props from Fraggle Rock, including some forgetfulness flowers and Fraggle worms. This is a remote-controlled Doozer vehicle used by the Doozers to get around. This is a huge life-size animatronic puppet of a Gartham from the Dark Crystal, a 1982 full-length feature film using advanced animatronic puppets. It was a truly pioneering film. Gary Kurtz, the producer of The Dark Crystal, had also been the producer of Star Wars, so he introduced Jim Henson and George Lucas to each other, and the two ended up exchanging ideas and creating creatures leading to The Dark Crystal. This is the set model for the Crystal Chamber. This is the costume of Kira the Gelfling from the Dark Crystal. There's a crystal bat on the left, and a head of an Urskek seen in the film. This animatronic head of Shekska the Treasurer still has his controls in place. George Lucas would go on to be the executive producer of Labyrinth, directed by Jim Henson in 1986, which had interactions between puppets and human actors. They used new radio controls to create many large and technologically advanced puppets. For example, the double-sided Four Guards, who in the film presented the human Sarah, played by a young Jennifer Connelly, with logic puzzles as she made her way through the labyrinth. And this is the talking door knocker from Labyrinth. Here are some more props from Labyrinth, in which David Bowie played the Goblin King. These are some puppets from Dog City, one of Jim Henson's last projects starring in 1989. These puppets were visually inspired by Cassius Marcellus Coolidge's famed portraits of dogs playing poker. In 2016, the Crystal fast food chain hired Jim Henson's Creature Shop to create these anthropomorphic crystal burger puppets for a new advertising campaign. These are goofy. I like them. Sadly, Jim Henson passed away in 1990 at the age of 53, but he had a remarkable cultural impact through puppetry. The exhibit ends with a Kermit the Frog Rainbow Connection stained glass window, a beautiful piece that was in the entryway of the New York City Muppets mansion during the 80s. So this exhibit was amazing! I would highly recommend seeing it for yourself if you are a Muppets fan. Now let's explore the Worlds of Puppetry Museum, which covers the global history of the puppetry arts. This is an intricate wood-carved marionette of a knight from Sicily. Some Native American groups, particularly in the Pacific Northwest, have puppets associated with totems. This was made by a member of the New Chanul people. Here are some puppets from Central and South America, an area which has generated a culturally fused puppet culture combining traditions of the old and new worlds. This is a lumberjack from the 1850s. These jig dolls were common in the United States back then. The lumberjack would be made to dance around on a board. This is the Population Puppets, a large political puppet effigy made by Peter Schumann, the founder of the politically charged Bread and Puppet Theater in Vermont, which I hear is an interesting place. I definitely want to visit it. That Mad Hatter marionette on the right from the 1920s was made by Tony Sarg, the man who came up with the idea for balloon floats at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade, which were directly inspired by marionettes. There are some WPA-era puppets. During the Great Depression, the Works Progress Administration employed a variety of artists, including puppeteers, who would travel around the country and perform during the 30s. In the mid-20th century, with the advent of television, puppet shows became quite popular, including Howdy Doody. Sadly, there is no Howdy Doody here. However, they do have this icon of pop culture history, Wayland Flowers' Madame marionettes, which was performed in popular 70s and 80s comedy sketches. After Wayland Flowers died during the AIDS epidemic, it was widely reported that he was buried with Madame. However, that was not true. I love these marionettes of Mae West and Carol Channing. These are not quite as flattering as their real counterparts were. Here are some marionettes from the New England Marionette Opera, the only marionette opera in America. There are some stop-motion puppets from films and TV shows on display. Here is the Corpse Bride and Victor Van Dort. These figures were screen used in the Tim Burton animated film. Here's another true icon, an authentic Gumby from 1962 used in the classic TV show. I wish they had Pokey too. And here is the Chucky puppet used in the 2021 TV series about the murderous doll. Creepy. These are rod puppet robots from the cult classic series Mystery Science Theater 3000. Their mechanized mouths were controlled by a remote control. Here's a display about Punch and Judy shows. These are somewhat crude comedies from Britain which have existed for centuries. Most of these are late 20th century marionettes of Punch, Judy, and other related characters. These are still common street shows across England. Here are some Spanish puppets of a prince and princess. This is a black soldier from the Opera dei Pupi of Sicily. There is a strong puppetry heritage in Sicily. Here's an Italian Commedia dell'arte theater, a form of puppet show which began in the 1500s that would use characters from other mediums of theater and create comical scenarios with them in puppet form. This is fun. Visitors can actually operate an old Sicilian dragon marionettes. A lot of wonderful craftsmanship goes into these puppets. It's quite a remarkable art form. Here are some characters that were once performed at the Salzburg Marionette Theater in Austria. And here are some puppets from Central and Eastern Europe. This is a prototype mask for Mufasa made in 1997 during the production of the Lion King Broadway show. I have had the opportunity to see the Lion King in Paris, as well as some smaller scale shows at some Disney theme parks, and the costumes and large animal puppets are absolutely fantastic. The puppets are definitely one of the highlights. And here is a prototype mask for Scar. On the left is a Galede mask. Such masks and puppets are used in the annual Yoruba Galede ceremonies in Nigeria, which honor women. These pieces were created by James Webster of New Zealand, who makes these traditional Maori karitau figures. This is an intricate portable glove puppet staged from China. China has a great history of puppetry, including shadow puppets, which are believed to originate from the Han court thousands of years ago. These are some large bunraku, puppets from Japan which are life-size. They look more like dolls. This is Ravana, a 10-headed demon from the ancient Indian epic The Tales of Rama and Sita. Here are some examples of Kaputli, marionettes used to tell the tale of the legendary hero Amar Singh Rathore in northern India. Here are some puppets from Koktugaksi, Korea's traditional puppet theater which would travel around in troops offering satirical views of daily life during the Three Kingdoms period. And we'll end off with this really awesome form of puppetry. They have a mock setup of Moi Roi Nu, the water puppet shows of Vietnam. Yes, they have a historical form of puppetry that literally dances out on the water. I would love to see a performance of this. There's a dragon that used to be out on the water, and it could actually shoot fireworks from its mouth. So I really enjoyed this museum. It was incredible to see some iconic puppets like Rudolph and Santa. Definitely visit this museum if you're in the Atlanta area. If you enjoyed this video, then please check out my other content featuring other unique museums, historic locations, roadside attractions, and much more here in Atlanta, as well as around America and Europe. Also, please like this video, share it, and subscribe to my channel. I'd really appreciate it. Thanks for watching!